Welcome back to Legislative Lens, People and Policy, where we'll take a closer look at the people shaping our Commonwealth and the policies that impact our daily lives. I'm your host, State Representative for the 1st Plymouth District, Michelle Badger. Today's episode is the last in a 4-part series that focuses on the committees I serve on. This episode focuses on the Joint Committee on Emergency Preparedness and Management. From severe weather and public health events to infrastructure challenges and long-term resilience planning, this committee and emergency preparedness professionals play a critical role in keeping Massachusetts prepared, responsive, and safe. In the first half of the episode, I'm joined by Representative Steven Ultrino, who is from Malden and represents the 33rd Middlesex District. He is the House Chair of the Joint Committee on Emergency Preparedness and Management. We'll talk about how the committee came to be, what its purpose is, and what kind of legislation is before the committee right now. Then in the second half, we'll bring the conversation to the local level with Chris Horvath, Emergency Manager for the town of Plymouth. Chris will share insights into how preparedness works on the ground in Plymouth and what the town is doing to make sure we are prepared as possible. Emergency management and preparedness is such an important subject, given record-breaking storms, climate changes, and so much more that directly affect the Commonwealth and make sure our communities are resilient when it matters most. So welcome to the podcast, Chair Ultrino. Thank you so much today for joining me.
Thank you, Representative Badger, for having me. It's a pleasure.
Oh, I'm glad you could make time. I know how busy you are. And so in this conversation, I like to level set everything with everyone we talk to make sure that everyone kind of understands what the purpose of the committees are or the subject we're talking about. So can you tell us a little bit more about the Committee on Emergency Preparedness and what you're charged with doing?
Sure. Well, first of all, welcome to the House of Representatives. I know this is your first term, and it's exciting to have you. And I look forward to working with you and the people of your district. So the history of this committee stems back to COVID. It was originally named the Committee on COVID. And Senator Driscoll, who was Representative Driscoll from the Milton area, was its first chair because his background was working in disasters and recovery and such. So as the COVID pandemic subsided, they did not want to get rid of the committee. So what the Speaker and Senate President decided to do was to change this and say, well, there are other emergencies that we either need to handle or prepare for. And like you said in your introduction, whether it's weather-related, vaccines that are still controversial from some, preparing for the World Cup, Sail Boston. And, our partners on the state level is MEMA, Massachusetts Emergency Management Association. So we meet with them quarterly, Director Brantley, who's fantastic. And she gives us updates on what they're doing. Recently there were some large fires in the town of Holyoke, where 130 units burnt, and MEMA and their partners were the first ones out there. So we want to make sure that we're updated to provide those local representatives and senators updates on what the state is doing to help their constituents. We're going to be focusing on the World Cup now, as you can imagine. Millions of people.
It's hard to even think about.
Yeah. And now that the teams have been all, schedules been put together, we will have thousands and thousands of emergency personnel. We'll also be partnering with Rhode Island, who will handle a lot of the medical emergencies. Rhode Island is not that far from Foxborough. And at the same time, the World Cup's going on, like near their finals, we have Sail Boston, which will bring in hundreds of thousands of people. So it's all great. It's great for the economy. It's great. It's exciting for people like us and our constituents to have something in our home state, but it's also the people behind the scenes that make it happen, that you don't even want to know about. And if you don't know what they're doing, that's a good thing. And so we're keeping up to date to make sure that we are prepared, working with FIFA and the federal government to make sure it'll go off well. So that's what we've been working on. We did send out the House bills out of committee Many of them relate to setting up a commission to study emergency management, updating our emergency management law that hasn't been updated in decades, actually since probably the 60s or 70s.
Yeah.
And the other most important thing, and then I'll let you speak, is working with local emergency managers, like the guest you're probably going to have on after me, to work with them to see what their needs are.
Yes.
We're extremely nervous with the cuts coming from FEMA. And a lot of those cuts are grants that are given out not just for state stuff like climate resilience and stuff like that, but also for your local emergency management. So
yeah. I know there's so many things to think about. And I mean, I found because we went on a site visit. We've been on a couple of site visits, and the site visit where we were at MEMA was really just so interesting to learn way more about. I mean, there's levels of emergency management that you don't see. I mean, here in Plymouth, we have our 4th of July parade, and we have our big Thanksgiving parade, which is got syndicated in other parts of the country, and people watch it on Thanksgiving Day like they do the Macy's parade.
Wow.
Yes, we're very lucky. You're always welcome to come on down the Saturday before Thanksgiving every year. And so we have one of the larger parades in our country, and you can see people. We've got our heavy presence of our police department, heavy presence of state police and other individuals and local security companies. But there's so much more that we don't see, and that I can't even imagine. I mean, to me, Plymouth, it's a big, huge thing for them to deal with. But then you add the World Cup. And so having that opportunity to learn more about the planning there and the way, needing to work with Rhode Island for pieces. And it was so interesting, the amount of things that we learned when we were at that bunker. Yeah. So
it is. It's just, before I was elected, 12 years ago to the House, I was in corrections. And, working with law enforcement, correction agents, correctional facilities and stuff, you don't want to know the plan behind the scenes. So if nothing happens, like we also talked to Director Brantley about the marathon.
Yep.
And, making sure things go well. The pieces behind putting these events together is just amazing. Like your parade.
Yep.
I'm sure the chief of police and fire in Plymouth are like, having nervous breakdowns.
Yes.
But, we don't realize what our law enforcement and public service agencies really do to make things go off well.
Yep.
And
I'm
learning more in this committee that it's like, wow, things like that are happening. We're bracing for weather impacts now. We're talking about culverts and flooding. You have your nuclear facility there in Plymouth. Pilgrim. Yeah, Pilgrim. It's a little of everything. So
it really is. I mean, I found that when we had our hearing, the breadth of legislation was from, as you say, we're looking at. I was very surprised to hear that our emergency management kind of laws hadn't really been looked at, hadn't been updated, since before we were born. And it's kind of crazy to think that. And then we had some vaccination things, and, it just ran that kind of spectrum of different, ideas and thoughts. And it was all over the place. And yet we were only looking at, I don't know if that was like 10 bills or something. But it was a lot. And so I think one of the things that I think is helpful, and we always like to talk about on this podcast, is the importance of getting people's involvement and our community involved in how they can have their voices heard. We've got our emergency managers, we've got all kinds of people, but how do you find it that what our local officials are dealing with, as well as our residents in Plymouth, our town managers, our different members of our committees, from town meeting to all kinds of how they are impacting some of the legislation that we deal with day to day, especially in this committee?
Yeah, so, there's a variety of ways. So first of all, one of the first things I did when I became a chair is I wrote to all the emergency managers across the Commonwealth and told them, you're welcome to call. You're welcome to give us your opinions. We work with their advocacy group that they're a part of, the Emergency Management in Massachusetts, and we welcome them to testify. And quite a few have testified in person as well as written. But they know your emergency managers, which is in every town and city across the Commonwealth, know more about this stuff than you and I will, right?
Yep.
And, when we have a regional issue or statewide issue, it's still up to the locals. Everything's local, not just politics are local, but, your police chiefs, your fire chiefs, your emergency managers, they know how they can handle Plymouth or Malden or what have you.
Everybody's different.
So we encourage those folks, whether they want to do it personally or through their statewide association, to give us ideas, what's working, what's not working, to stay in touch with MEMA, to stay in touch with Department of Public Health when it comes to, there was a school in Medford the other day.
Oh my gosh, yes.
One school that was shut down for the virus and norovirus. And now it's day 2. There's 130 students were sent home. Now, you might say, well, let the school superintendent deal with that. Well, it's more than that. And this the next town over from me. DPH gets involved right away. We just want to make sure, even if it's norovirus with kids that have stomach aches or faculty, that's something that could,
spread easily. I mean, we saw how
and now
COVID
kids
spread.
are going to lose school,
right?
And it may just be as easy as, it's 2 days of school, but it's more than that because they're going to their recreation center after. They're going with their parents or guardians, who's going to work, who's now going to
spreading it.
Yeah. So we, our state agencies is, I know everyone's critical of state government and stuff, but they do, the work that you and I couldn't imagine.
No.
And they get a lot of input from their local emergency managers, because we can have all the plans in the world. If we can't work with the locals, it just doesn't work. It just doesn't work.
Yeah.
So, constituents should stay vigilant. They should ask questions. And communication, for reps and senators in the district is critical. And by you doing something like that is just another, cherry on the top to let people know, hey, listen, we always have to stay vigilant, whether it's the common cold or whether it's, God forbid, a fire or, flooding. This pilgrim plant that you in your district.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many different things that affect all of us. And I think what I found so we've had a handful of hearings, but we just had an informational hearing with Chair Linatra's committee, which is I'm also on, so it was great. It was a 2-for-1, which is federal funding, policy, and accountability. And one of the things we were talking about is some of those impacts that are coming from the changes in the federal government and how things are being funded or not funded or focused on and not focused on. And a lot of what we heard was that preparedness, which is what we have been talking about so much, making sure that we are planning for something we hope we never have to do. Like if there's an incident, I mean, that's why they've been planning for years for the World Cup. They've been planning, I think when we were at MEMA, they said, the Boston Marathon is over on one day and the next day it's planning for the following year. And so have all those preparedness pieces put in, but we did hear there's been a little bit of impact. So I don't know if you want to share some of that takeaway.
Yeah. Well, funding is critical. And the unfortunate part of the federal government and FEMA is every day we hear something different. So Director Brantley and the Secretary of Public Health and, even local fire and police department, we have no idea the impact or the cuts that we're going to get. 1 month ago, they were going to eliminate FEMA, and now they're going to give block grants to the state. And a district next door to mine just lost $90 million in climate.
That was wild.
These roads are going to get flooded, which, as you know, control 60% of the produce in New England.
That stat was scary.
And you may
Scary.
say, well, it's a road. Yeah, but it's a road where like 60% of all our produce
Produce
in New
goes.
England is,
Yeah.
you know, that's not something you can just,
You
I
don't.
remember that place as a kid. That's just not something you can move
Yeah. No.
tomorrow. So we
No.
were building up the Mystic River area and the Chelsea Everett area,
Yeah.
and that was cut. But unfortunately, what Director Brantley and folks in emergency management are doing now is, trying to prepare, but not even knowing what the budget's going to be.
Yep.
And that's critical. And I wish I had an answer for you, but
Oh.
when uh, we're not going to get extra money.
No.
So we're not sure, and the state just cannot,
Mm-mm.
or local government just cannot make up for the cuts that come from the federal government in any area. So I'm a little nervous about that, to be very honest with you. And it's the what ifs.
Yeah.
Like if they told us today X amount of dollars are going to be cut, we go to
Great.
Plan
Yep.
B and try. We don't know that. Um, Fortunately, Director Brantley is on the National Association of Emergency Management Directors, so
Yeah.
she can get some of the insight from lobbyists or members of Congress or something. But that's still not, um,
It's not.
accurate.
Yeah. And it's not.
And yeah, for her to plan, uh,
Yeah.
that's
Exactly.
going to be very difficult.
It's hard to plan. And, it doesn't just impact her, it's DPH
Right.
when we had that conversation of, public health issues and how that kind of spread. And then I know I always like to bring up bird flu because of the issues that we had in Plymouth. So there's, and there's so many things that we need to plan for and prepare for. And, there's the what if in Plymouth, one of the biggest issues that when I first got appointed to the committee, the first thing I did was reach out to my town and say, all right, was appointed to this committee and it's emergency preparedness and management. I want to sit down. I would love it if we can sit down with the chief of fire, police, and anybody else, obviously our emergency management manager and anybody else you think would be important for me to learn about what the biggest issues are that facing Plymouth. I mean, I've been involved for 15 years or so at this point with my community. So I have an idea, but I wanted to make sure that my ideas were correct, And so we sat around and, honestly, one of the first things that our town manager said was bird flu. Because if bird flu, because obviously at the time we were in the peak of it, but bird flu, if for any chance it continues at the rate that it was at this last winter, and then we get those cold snaps and we just have dead birds in the middle of our ponds, and the response to that, because again, that's another piece to it. What happens if it then goes into humans? And so there's those what ifs that we all are facing. And so that's why, we hope we can plan and plan and plan for every different option and different ways that things can fall out. But if we don't have the funding behind it and, things, and we're not preparing, that's the scary part.
Right.
It's the scary part.
Fortunately, Governor Haley is trying to be one step ahead, like doing the New England Consortium of vaccinations. And we have warehouses now, not just like the one in Franklin for supplies, but we also have warehouses for backup vaccinations for a bunch of things. Look at the measles spreads. I think North Carolina has just been hit with, cases of measles. We would have always thought that was
we don't need that. Yeah.
under control.
We don't need that anymore. Yeah.
So, the governor, to her credit, has said, listen, we can't rely on skeptics and all this misinformation when it comes to people's health. Massachusetts, I live in a very, in the city of Malden, I only represent about 70% of it because it's so large. There's over 70,000 people in 5 square miles. We're like the second most dense. So if we had another COVID or something like that, that spreads like wildfire.
I didn't realize it was so small. I mean, I knew there were so many people, but 5 square miles. Wow. We've got 61,000 or 60, almost 62,000 people in 100 square miles in Plymouth.
Yeah, we are stack and pack.
Yeah.
And, and we're an older city because it was developed, with a lot of factories back in the day. So, our school systems are, whatever, we have to worry about the spread of even the common cold.
Yes.
That could, go through a school system or the senior center or the library or wherever people congregate. So, I give the governor a lot of credit
Yeah.
for stepping up and not relying on but that costs the state taxpayers more,
Yep.
where we would hope our tax dollars on the federal side would support us on that end. So
Yeah, and I know she's done incredible trying to make sure that in the legislature as well, Senate and the House working together to make sure that whereas not impacted as much as we could be on a variety of different topics. We've got obviously the House committee that's looking in on the federal funding piece, and then there's the Senate. They have a working group, I believe, that's doing the same thing. And so I think it's really important that we are, and it's for our listeners to know that there's a lot being done, but there's, what is it, $9 billion a little under $9 billion in the rainy day fund. And that's not going to go as far as some people think it will if we have to start doing all of these little things. So I think the actions that are being taken with a lot of thought and what can the money of, in Massachusetts, how can it best go and help us through this, because we don't know how long some of this uncertainty will last. And I think we all agree, I think the economy is going to get worse before it gets better. And, you hate to look at it. I'm a glass half full kind of girl, not half empty, but sometimes you got to look at the reality of things and, the way we see things trajecting in different parts of our economy. So,
right.
But
Yep.
I guess one of my last questions was what piece of legislation are you most excited about that has gone through the committee?
It's mostly the one to set up a commission to make sure that we have enough support on our local, it's Rep. Vieira's bill.
Yes.
Most of the committee members, it's funny because most of you folks are from the South Shore.
Yeah, I know. It's really funny.
Most of the committee are, Democrat and Republican, which is great. But they're either the Cape or Plymouth South.
Yep.
And here I am in an urban city as the chair.
We're a little different. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's but we are next to Revere, and which has a big beach, as you know.
Yes, of course.
Malden, which is probably maybe a couple miles from the beach, we're now considered a coastal community because the waters are rising. I have a neighborhood that's being flooded more and more.
Yeah.
So that's one thing, coastal, but also the density with public health.
Yep.
And we have a large immigrant population. We have our own issues like many cities.
Yeah.
So to get this commission together to say, where are we? Where do we need to go? How do we educate folks on the local level to be prepared?
Yes.
In what we do as a state, because the cities don't have the resource. I was a city councilor and school committee member before coming here. I understand. And there's no way cities and towns, but they do a damn good job.
Yeah, they do.
It's just, they know what they're doing.
Yeah.
And, I hope someday we're not a reactionary group of people, but we are a reactionary group of people.
Yeah.
And,
unfortunately.
but, there's a lot of preparation that our local chiefs of police and fire really do. And
gosh,
they just do it.
So many scenarios. I mean, that they work.
But it's got to be a good partnership with the state and the feds and local. So I'm hoping something like that comes up.
Yeah.
But I'm more concerned not just with the legislation, but with the funding. The legislation is words on paper.
Yes.
If there's nothing behind it to help move these resources to, you can have all the best legislation you want. Everyone will tell you we need the resources.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's mostly looking at this upcoming budget cycle, which is going to be difficult.
Yeah.
And just tracking what the feds are going to do moving forward.
Yeah. No, it's a lot, but I agree with you. I think that's the most important piece that we have because, we're preparing, but are making sure that everyone's prepared across the board, that we're doing it properly, that it is in 2025 and further and not 1960s, 70s, or 80s, where so much has changed. Like you say, you've got you're a seaside community, even though you're not, so in Plymouth, we've got roads that flood and a lot, and we've done a lot of work for resiliency purposes, but there's always some more that needs to be done. And I know in Plymouth, we're doing some really interesting work we'll talk about in a little bit about insurance companies, because insurance companies don't want to insure. So how do we as a town collectively help those people make sure that they're insured and what we need? So collectively, if you need help, how does that? We've got the second pilot program because the first one is in Salem. So I think it's really exciting that we get to be part of that. But
that is interesting because I not to cut you off. I sell real estate on the side.
Yes.
And, when we're doing, looking for whether my buyers are looking for property or selling property, right away I go to the FEMA flood maps, which are updated as we speak. And then I look and I call a friend of mine who's in insurance. I say, hey, just, 123 Main Street. That's in a flood zone. What do you think? That flood insurance, a couple thousand plus. I'm like, wow.
They're out.
And these folks have to budget for it.
Yeah.
And they're like, and they don't always cover everything.
No.
And more and more people in different areas, even if you can't see the water from your house, are in flood zones.
Yeah.
We're an old community. We have culverts that are over 100 years old. And underneath our cities are creeks and stuff we built on marshland or something.
Same. Yep.
All of a sudden, these people are hit with a couple $1,000s more per year on top of the homeowner's insurance. That's a big hit.
It really is. It's substantial. I mean, there's so many pieces that are impacted. Like, it's not just what's happening in our environment, but it's also how it impacts our economy and, job security, different industries in particular. I mean, it's really, and our community budgeting, making sure that they can, if there's we're having more 100-year floods across our country and the state than we've, had before. And, 100 years shouldn't happen every 100 years, right? It shouldn't happen every 10 years or every year. It should be once every 100 years. So, so we've got a lot, but I've really appreciated being on the committee and
having me.
And taking the time today. Really, thank you so much. And, it's been a true pleasure just talking about this. And I really look forward to learning more as we continue to work our way through the session. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for all your work as well.
Thank you. Have a good rest of your day.
Thank you.
Now I want to shift from the statewide lens to what this work looks like on the ground and to bring a local perspective on emergency preparedness and management right here in Plymouth. We are incredibly fortunate to have Chris Horvath leading this work. Chris has served as Plymouth's Emergency Preparedness Director for the past 4 years, though many of you know him best as the man with Rio, the fire department's comfort dog, who is here with us today. But Chris is so much more than Rio's dad and handler. Before coming to Plymouth, he spent 20 years in the United States Coast Guard. During that time, he worked in counter-narcotics and law enforcement, collaborating with federal and international agencies in the Caribbean and Pacific to support training and emergency management efforts. Originally from New York, we won't hold that against you because I'm guessing you're a Yankees fan. Oh, no? Oh, perfect.
No, I'm actually a Mets fan.
Oh, well, that's also, we won't hold that against you either. At least it's not the Yankees. Chris now calls Plymouth home, where he lives with his wife and 4 kids. Thank you so much for your service in the Coast Guard, and thank you for all that you do every day for Plymouth. And thank you for coming, and welcome on to the podcast, Chris.
Absolutely, ma'am. Thank you very much. I appreciate you having me in Rio.
We're so excited to have you because we just finished a conversation with Steve Ultrino, Chair of the Emergency Preparedness and Management Committee, talking about state-level emergency preparedness, what's in front of the committee. And I know that when I was first assigned to the committee, you were wonderful, and a bunch of other, our police chief, our fire chief, our town manager, harbor master. I think the list goes on. There was a bunch of people in that meeting who took time out of the day just to talk to me about what was the most important things, what I should be paying attention to. Because like I said before, I have been involved in our community, but I don't want to assume I'm not the day-to-day boots on the ground making sure we're ready. And so I guess I just wanted our listeners to really hear some of that conversation we had. So can you tell us a little bit what you do day to day for Plymouth?
Yeah, absolutely. As the Director of Emergency Management for the town, I fall as a division under the fire department. And so the first job is to manage the Emergency Operations Center, and that's co-located down with the Cedarville Fire Station. Fortunately, the EOC is not active every day because that would mean that a lot of bad things are occurring. So Chief Foley and I have transitioned it a lot into a very well-utilized training center over the last 2 years.
Yes.
So, state level, DCF, federal partners like the Coast Guard and other agencies have utilized it as well. So we get a lot of our own firefighters and other town departments that have utilized it, for training. After I've taken on Rio this past February, the day-to-day, there really is no 2 days that are exactly the same.
Yeah.
So we have 7 fire stations in Plymouth.
Yep.
And we do a lot of station visits. We do a lot of municipal buildings, town hall. When we can, we try to go to all the schools in Plymouth. We only have 2 dedicated dogs in the schools. So we really try to make the rounds to do all that. And then, the Center for Active Living and other assisted livings. What we also do is we fall under the district attorney's office with Plymouth County Comfort Dogs. It's kind of like Paw Patrol on steroids type.
It's so fun when everyone's together.
Yeah, it's chaos. But we have, I believe right now, it's either 24 or 25 dogs for the 27 cities and towns.
Yep.
The primary job is crisis response. Yep. Unfortunately, when communities lose a student or a staff member, that's the main driven focus of it. Yeah. But we also do a lot of the feel-good events. We just went and marched in the East Bridgewater Parade, and then we do things with DCF and a lot of different Center for Active Living. So it's busy. And then on top of that is the emergency management.
Yeah.
A lot of plan writing and logistics and keeping track of that with the different divisions and departments.
Yeah. it's a big job. And Rio brings a smile to everyone's face whenever they see them. I know I'm often reminding myself to make sure I say hi to you before I say hi to Rio. It's
Story of my life.
It's a problem. I know. I feel bad about it. I'm like, oh, Chris, hi. Oh, Rio. So how does your role specifically interact with like police, fire, public health as you're doing those day-to-day planning and
So police and fire are probably the 2 most common. I'm involved in all of the different planning for Thanksgiving parade, 3rd and 4th of July, those larger scale events. Emergency management, usually I focus on the incident action plans, and we take all the different departments and divisions plans, put it all together in an ICS type format. Yep. So everybody's on the same page, because whenever we have those larger events, we have out of town players. We have state, we have, Metro-Lec and different PDs. So it's kind of a collaborative that we all do for that. DPH, public health, unfortunately with bird flu and, what we've had in the past, we meet a lot, probably more often than in years past, just because of some of the stranger things that have occurred. So emergency management and public health tend to, not on a day-to-day operations level, but we do talk quite frequently. We usually end up running with the same crowd, so to speak.
It's true. We were actually just talking about the parade. I invited Chair Ultrino to come down anytime he wants to come to the parade. I was like, it's the Saturday before Thanksgiving. Come on down. But we were talking about just how much that goes on in the background. It's not, people see the parade. They see all the wonderful events that happen. But the amount of planning that goes on for the what ifs and this is happening, so how do we make sure everybody stays safe is really unbelievable.
It starts months out.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
And obviously the parade organizers themselves,
yes,
I would imagine it's just a continuous cycle year after year.
Yep.
Town level, for the Thanksgiving parade, we usually start ramping up in August.
Yep.
And it's just because of that. There are all those different entities that are involved for that 1 3-hour block.
Yeah.
That usually rains lately.
I know. The 2 years in a row, it's got to stop.
I know.
It's not okay.
I know. But unfortunately, if it doesn't rain, chances are it's going to be freezing.
Yeah. I think I'd rather cold. That the cold and the rain are not great.
Well, the cold is more fitting because, Santa closes out the parade.
It's true.
So we're into winter. We live in New England. We can expect it.
I know. But when you've rain and you're wet, and I don't know, it doesn't make it as much fun. But it's still a wonderful parade, and I'm so grateful for everyone who puts that in our July 4th parade and, all the festivities around them. Together, I volunteered on the Thanksgiving one, years ago for a year to do one of and there's so much work that goes into it, and the amount of volunteer hours, and it's incredible. We're lucky to have that in our community. When you're thinking about, as you prepare for, what is your biggest kind of need or priority for the town. And we are so diverse. We were talking about it. So Chair Ultrino is from Malden, which is 5 square miles. They have about 70,000 people, like Plymouth. I mean, we're 62,000, but we're 104 square miles, 400 miles of road. I'm sure in 5 square miles, you don't have that many miles of road. And so we, because of our geographic diversity, the number of the close proximity to the water, and just so many other things, have a lot of probably maybe more things than some other communities, or different things in other communities to kind of consider.
I would say both, different and more. Because including the state forest, we're 133 square miles.
Yes.
We are the largest town in Massachusetts.
Yep.
We're a coastal community, but yet we also have a lot of forest land. We have, 15 schools, a decommissioned power plant, an airport, a hospital. We pretty much have everything.
Yes.
Right now, the biggest focus that we have going on between myself and the fire chief is the Community Wildfire Protection Plan, CWPP. I know you've heard about it.
Please tell everybody.
Yeah, it's a lot of planning for those what ifs that you hope never happen, but the early warning signs and obviously fire is the warning sign, but when you're tracking it and we're seeing, directionally which way it's coming from, and if it's coming from the state forest, over through the Pine Hills, we run into different logistical challenges, So the CWPP should be finishing up in the next few months, It's going to be very informative for the community. There's going to be a web-based platform, so at any time, you can go in, you can put in your address, and you can see different brush layers. But then necessarily, if you want to look at, possible evacuations and stuff like that. So probably the most helpful part of this is it brings together a lot of the different departments to talk about it.
Yes.
Departments that don't normally worry about emergency type situations, this is kind of bringing it to the forefront.
Yeah. I mean, it's such a good thing. I mean, we have I was lucky to sit on the school safety committee for a number of years. And so, I mean, that's a microcosm of our larger community and the concerns that we have. But I was, again, lucky to help rewrite the emergency preparedness documents and really get in there, and having everybody at the table for the perspectives is so important because,
absolutely,
I'm a school committee member, but there's a teacher and there's an administrator and there's police and fire, making sure that you're thinking about all the different entities that you wouldn't think about. Like, why are all the doors numbered? Like, we know why all the doors are numbered to make it easy for police, fire, first responders, whoever, to know what door things are happening at.
Absolutely.
It's not something as an average citizen that I probably would even think about, but learning that piece and learning the way that we make sure that our community is the most ready and, ready to just jump in and make sure we're all good. But the fire piece is huge. And I know myself and Senator Fernandez, his staff, Rep. Lenatra, have all had conversations with DCR just to make sure that, and obviously with Chief Foley, just to make sure that we're all on the same page. And if there's anything that needs to be done, that we're there to support, because that is a huge part. I was talking with Rep. Gasky, who is the representative, also a freshman like myself, for Carver, who also is in the same office suite as me. So, we're attached with a forest and we're attached in a wall in our office suite at the State House. And so just talking to him about the importance of, I don't know if there's something we'll have to do for DCR or for Plymouth in general, but together we'll work on Miles Standish, because if we don't,
Absolutely.
Are we going to get the protection that we need? It's a lot to think about. I mean, we've seen fires in the past. I mean, all about the future. The past. When I was a kid, I remember there was one further up Long Pond Road by where I live, or I should say Bourne Road, Long Pond, Halfway Pond Road area. And I mean, thankfully not a lot of damage or as much damage as could have happened.
Yeah.
But, it's things we have to consider in a place like Plymouth.
Absolutely, because we know that depending on a wind shift, it can go from easily containable to out of control. Mm-hmm. So, fortunately, there haven't been many issues.
Yeah. Knocking on wood.
We had a decent one last year.
Yes.
And that was, I believe, 32 acres.
Yep.
And that was in that tight Pine Barren area.
Yep.
So this is going to be a good thing. And we'll see how it
Yeah,
and
with our increase in population, there's
Absolutely.
a lot more to consider.
Especially in South Plymouth.
Yes, there's a lot more to kind of consider, and how things probably were where the plan was before when we didn't have a Red Brook or we didn't have certain areas being down in Cedarville that were kind of built out. So thank you for that work you're doing. It's so important. What do you like, I guess, what are your, as Plymouth kind of changes its approach to weather, recent storms and things, and the last year's outbreak of flu in avian flu population? I'm going to do that again. Hold on. Do you feel that Plymouth has changed its approach with change in weather, recent storms, and things like last year's outbreak with bird flu? As we kind of talk about with your emergency preparedness plan, when was the last time we looked at a plan? I think that's kind of, how has emergency management kind of changed since you've been here?
So the comprehensive emergency management plan is kind of like the one-stop shop, for emergency management in the town. And it's generally a 5-year review, which every 5 years tends to be a full update.
Yes.
So we are actually putting the finishing touches on a new one right now.
Which is awesome.
Yeah. And the biggest thing with that is a lot of these things are completely new to us, right? We're all used to the weather events and nor'easters and, snowfall. Fortunately, we haven't had that many major snowfalls in the last few years.
Yeah.
Obviously, Winter Storm Keenan in January of, I believe, 22.
Yeah, a long time ago.
Not too much since then.
Yeah.
But bird flu, that was a new one.
It was a lot.
Yep. And then also with the mosquitoes the year before in September and October.
Yep.
So it's kind of like all hazards planning, and you hope for none of it.
Yeah.
But that's when the public health comes in and they're getting state guidance and passing it out. And those are the times when we have, daily calls, hourly calls almost at certain points. So you can't plan for everything, but the comprehensive emergency management plans are similar to those old school choose your own ending books.
Yeah.
It's giving us the starting point.
Yes.
And the biggest thing in any one of those emergencies is communication.
Yeah.
Whether it's between different division heads, department heads, town leadership, and then notification to the public. Absolutely people have to be able to make their own decisions based on the information provided. And if they don't get that information, they can't make that decision what's best for them and their families.
Yeah. I think that's a perfect transition to about our the emergency notification system, which I think is really important, and we're always talking about it.
Yes. Yes. So actually currently where the county is, we're starting to look at a different notification system. Code Red is what we've been utilizing. And I expect in the next few months that we're going to probably transition to a different one, and all that information will be coming out, whether it's via social media. Will everybody
be rolled in that's subscribed? Will they roll in?
Unfortunately, it's going to take a new sign-on.
Okay.
So it'll be another media blitz we did 2 years ago with those flyers.
Yep.
It's going to be very similar to that. Okay. And, once a decision is made between, I would imagine, police chief, fire chief, sheriff, and, the Plymouth Emergency Communication Center, the dispatch at county.
Yep.
I believe, we'll get that information out as soon as we can.
It's a great tool. I mean, I like the emails and the phone calls. You get it in all different directions.
You can pick how you want to be notified. And, we've used it over the last few years for, little things like street closures, but then, major things with, when plowing was going to happen, or unfortunately if there was a, missing child. And so it is very beneficial.
Yeah. You really know what's happening, which I appreciate. Sometimes it gets lost in my email, but
that's why you can have it then to your cell phone, and then people that still have house phones, and you can choose your poison when it comes to that.
Exactly. How is it that you work with MEMA and that coordination there? We were talking about earlier in the podcast that our committee had a site visit to the bunker, and we learned a great deal about all the work that they do and to support local and regional kind of events that are happening. So
I've actually been very fortunate to have a great relationship when I first started in October of 21. MEMA, obviously Massachusetts Emergency Management Agency, they are the state level for what I do for the local level. And then we have FEMA, obviously, with the federal level.
Yeah.
MEMA and their local coordinators are one-stop shop when it comes to any questions that we have. They help with distribution if anything's needed. There are web-based programs. Let's say we're having a large snowstorm and we need extra crews to come down, and our DPW, we don't have enough. I can request them over programs that MEMA runs, and they can send crews from whether it's, Gloucester, Reading, whoever. So we have a really good relationship with MEMA. I'm actually on their advisory board for emergency managers. So we meet with Director Brantley and monthly, actually.
Great.
Yes, absolutely. And then ironically, they called me, Alan Phillips called me on Friday from MEMA. He's the East coordinator in charge. And they actually selected me to go down to Miami to the National Hurricane Center.
Oh, exciting.
In
Congratulations. Ooh, Florida in January. Very nice.
Go from New England to Miami in January.
You'll take one for the team?
I'm from the government. I'm here to help. I will be more than happy to do that. But yeah, we get to go down there and, learn about hurricane tracking and storm surges. And, with us being obviously a coastal town as well, who, may or may not be due for one of those large-scale events.
We haven't had one since 91.
Exactly. So I think it's a very cool opportunity. Yeah. So myself, as an emergency management director and one of their MEMA's local coordinators, we get to go down, and it's sponsored by FEMA and MEMA. So the town of Plymouth incurs zero cost for what I would imagine is going to be excellent training.
Yes. Oh my gosh, that's amazing. What an opportunity. I mean, because we are kind of a ticking time bomb probably for a major storm. We've seen them in New Jersey. They just haven't made it as far up as us. So.
Absolutely.
When you're planning for and having, you have Rio and you go into schools and you're talking to people in the community, what do you share with Plymouth residents to what should they be doing to prepare for weather emergencies and other things? Are there things you would suggest they do in their homes to be prepared, or?
Yeah, getting into the winter season is always a great time to talk about stuff like that. And some of it sounds corny and, outdated, but keeping, cell phones charged, and whether you have those portable chargers, the battery powered ones, keeping those ready to go at any time, flashlights, batteries. If you really prefer some of the older stuff like the radios, like it really is a wealth of information that my children would have no idea how to use one or get anything out of it.
I keep one in my basement just in case.
That's it. And generators and fuel. Yes, selfless plug for the fire department. Please don't run your generators inside of a dwelling. But
and probably make sure that they help connect them, correct? You can correct them incorrect. You can connect it incorrectly.
People can, yes.
It's a nice thing to have the fire department come in and make sure that it's connected properly.
Not 100% sure if that's a service that they provide or not.
I just remember I had a neighbor who didn't have it correctly, and the fire department made a visit. And they were like, if you just had...
Okay. And fire prevention might do that.
Maybe.
I'm not sure off the top of my head.
That's not a plug for them, but just make sure it's installed properly. That's a thing.
And then anything else like cleaning up, wet leaves in your gutters, and then, trees around power lines, just anything that you can do to kind of help a little bit. Blankets, always having them ready, because if the power goes out, like last night with the wind chill, I think it was in the single digits. Oh. It's going to drop pretty quickly.
It's going to get cold. It's cold. And Rio just came over to say hi to me. So thank you, Rio, for coming over and saying hi. Do you feel like Rio's presence in schools and things and around the community has been really helpful? Obviously in the fire department, but it's been a nice kind of...
He is an immediate game changer. The calming effect that he has is something that I knew it was going to bring a lot of good, so to speak, right? But I didn't expect the outpouring. Just the outpouring. Like, I can't go anywhere either with Rio, without Rio, whether he has his vest on or not. I do have 4 kids, so we're out and about in Plymouth, obviously, constantly. So, whether it's adults, whether it's kids, the teachers love him just as much, if not more, than the students when we go to the different schools. And, when he's with his work dog buddies, when we're doing county events, just the attention that the dogs receive, but not just from the population, that they thrive off of it. Yeah. It's really, it's pretty something to see. I didn't expect it to that level.
And they're such a diverse kind of dogs? I mean, there's like all kinds of dogs.
In the county?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
You get like a Great Dane, right? Yeah.
Star is a 5-year-old Great Dane from the Sheriff's Department. And actually the first dog in the program is Opry from Hingham, the Hingham Police Department and the Hingham schools. And Officer Tom Ford is the one that reached out to DA Tim Cruz about, the whole thing. And they actually got Opry off of a kill list, I believe, down in Texas.
Oh my goodness.
And they began with a few different trainers up here, and that's eventually what became our 4 trainers on the team.
Yeah.
And she is just a lights out little dog. She skateboards, so she puts the rest of these dogs to shame. And then we have few different types of labs. Obviously, the Great Dane, she's kind of a mix. Cream colored retrievers. I believe there's 2 of them. So there's a diverse little group.
Yeah, they're they just bring like joy. You can't not have joy when you see the adorable group of dogs when you're at an event or just going somewhere. Yep, we're talking about you, Rio. So I guess we'll look ahead a little bit. We'll transition a little bit, but what do you think are the biggest challenges that face you as a local emergency manager? Or in general, just in Plymouth? I mean, we've kind of hit on it a little bit.
Yeah, no, the biggest challenges are staying ahead of something that hasn't occurred yet.
Yeah.
So the biggest challenge is always going to be communication. And I don't mean that to say that it's lacking. No. But it's always has to be at the forefront. So we're constantly preparing for something that hasn't happened, and no 2 emergencies are ever going to be the same. So we do a lot of planning with the police department and the fire department for schools, right? For the events that obviously everybody hopes and prays never occurs. And then we'll never have 2 weather systems that are the same. October of 2021, when we had that pop-up nor'easter.
Oh, that's right.
We were like 98% without power.
Yes.
So it's all things that fortunately and unfortunately occurred, but fortunately we have a great relationship with Eversource now. Whenever we have a major storm like that, they embed one of their liaisons with myself down at the EOC so we can coordinate between fire and DPW and cut crews, and this way different pieces can get back online as quick as possible.
And they are still like some of their vehicles will be at Plymouth Public School facilities too, right? To dispatch, isn't that what they use? I mean, I could be lying, but I swear at one point we were using some like Plymouth South, Plymouth North, one of the high schools.
Probably at some point.
Just because they're it's a good place to use as a midpoint, really. Plymouth South High School is the middle of the Plymouth North. You can get on the highway and get where you
and
need
Plymouth
to get.
North is our primary shelter for the town.
Yep.
So we have great relationship with Red Cross.
Yes.
So whenever you open up a shelter with Red Cross assistance, it then becomes a regional shelter.
Yep.
Regional shelters, now they can't turn away animals. So we work with animal control, and we have, absolutely. So, some of those people are going to try to weather out a storm
if they can't bring their
dog
or cat or lizard,
whatever their pet may be, right? So we have a great working relationship with Red Cross. You can't get that done without those, but like everywhere else, volunteer numbers are down post-COVID.
Yeah.
So we have EOC volunteers that, this year we're going to do refresher training on shelter, and so this way, hopefully, we can always maintain on our own in case Red Cross can assist.
Yeah, yeah. No, Red Cross is wonderful. We had a meeting not that long ago with them and just learning the breadth. I mean, I knew they did a lot, but just learning the true breadth of what they do is just
with
incredible.
How little they do it with.
Yes, it's incredible. And the distance in which they cover and just how passionate they are. I mean, I meet passionate people all the time, but like they were very passionate about what they do. So we were incredibly lucky to have them in our area. And, not far from us, we did a site visit as part of this committee, is their regional center, but gosh, I can't remember where it was, but in Massachusetts.
Okay.
We were there, and Nathan had the opportunity to go. I had another hearing that same day, but we're lucky because it's where all the blood goes out of. It's where like so much
the
of
blood
that,
bank and everything.
The blood bank. It's there. We're lucky that we get to be that center, and we get so much of. Maybe not their resource, but they're right in our backyard. And so it's a wonderful tool. So I've kept you for a long time today, but I just want to, is there anything else you kind of want to share? Make sure that our Plymouth residents know about the important work that you do.
Just, anytime you see myself or Rio, just feel free to ask any questions that you may have. I'm not going to know all the answers, but hopefully, I can point you in the right direction if I don't know it. We try to put out as much as we can as far as, weather related on the emergency management, Facebook page, the fire department, the, town of Plymouth. Obviously, we have a communications coordinator.
Yes.
And Casey puts out, as absolute much information as they can. So, feel free to utilize those and be on the lookout for what we're going to go to next with a notification system.
Perfect. And I think that is, Plymouth has really the town of Plymouth has really stepped up its communication game probably in the last 2 years. Casey's been awesome getting all that out there. And I always try to remind people to follow the town of Plymouth on Instagram. I think they're on Facebook, I know. I don't know if they're on anything else. I don't have Twitter or whatever it's called now, so I don't know.
Couldn't even tell you.
But I know they have both of those. So Facebook and Instagram, and they are updated. There's probably a post a day at least about something really wonderful happening in our community and also things to pay attention to. So thank you so much for joining this conversation today. And I really am grateful that you took your time out to be with us, and Rio for coming over and hanging out right next to me. I really appreciate it. And then just to help connect the work we do at the State House, it's so important. And I'm, the reason I started this podcast and a big piece of me trying to get a lot of the conversation out is because when I was running, so many people said, what does a state rep do? So I want to show, this is the work we're doing on the State House at that level and the legislation piece, but also how our residents can impact that legislation that happens. But then when the legislation is passed, how it helps at home, right?
Absolutely.
There's a legislation that we just bill about to look at emergency management study, since the laws around it have not kept up. I think the last time they were, it was in the 70s were changed. So we're looking at really kind of Representative Vera put that forth, and hopefully that will, I think made it out of our committee this week, I want to say it was, and hopefully that'll continue down the legislative process. So we're incredibly lucky to have you here giving your expertise, which go deep and for many years of service to our country and to our community. And I also just want to again thank Chair Ultrino for being involved in this conversation as well to let us know about the state piece. These conversations today highlight how the work of the Joint Committee on Emergency Preparedness and Management directly connects to the challenges and responsibilities facing our communities, from strengthening emergency planning and disaster response to supporting local departments to preparing for severe weather, cybersecurity threats, and emerging risks. My hope is that today's discussion, the last in my series focusing on the committees I'm fortunate to serve on, help give Plymouth residents a clearer understanding of how emergency preparedness, emergency management policies shape real experiences, from coordination behind storm response to the resources available during a crisis to the long-term planning that keeps our communities safe. Thank you for listening to Legislative Lens, People and Policy. I'm State Representative Michelle Badger, and I want to wish everyone a happy holiday season and a truly fabulous 2026. Our next episode is in January, and will feature a couple of other freshman representatives taking a retrospect back at the year, talking about what we've learned and what we're looking forward to in the coming year. In between episodes, you can stay connected with the work we're doing at the State House and in Plymouth by following me on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, and Blue Sky. You can also reach me directly at michelle.badger@mahouse.gov with any questions or an idea for a future podcast episode. Thank you again for tuning into Legislative Lens, People and Policy. Take care and have a great day.